Hi, and welcome back to Football Made Simple.
It was a truly top-of-the-table clash in El Clasico, with both sides coming in level on points. Ancelotti was able to mastermind the victory, however, with the 3-1 win thanks to Benzema, Fede Valverde and Rodrigo, whilst Ferran netted for Barcelona. The XG suggested that the chance quality was even, and Real were just able to be more clinical. But how was Ancelotti able to beat Xavi? Let's take a look. And we'll begin with Madrid in possession before moving on to Barcelona. And Madrid's build-up shape could vary, but for the most part it was a fairly traditional 4-3-3. And Barcelona were looking to be aggressive in the press throughout the match, and ended with a much lower passes per defensive action than Real Madrid. One way they did this was by looking to apply pressure on both of the centre-backs to make it much more difficult for Real to progress up the pitch. This was often done by Pedri joining Lewandowski in the press, and the goal would be to keep Tchouaméni in their cover shadows so that they couldn't find this easy pass into the midfield. But in truth, this pressing shape from Barcelona was fairly poor throughout the 90, as it usually became a 1 and a 1 in the midfield, as Busquets was slow to join in the press, as he is now aging somewhat and therefore finds it difficult to make up the ground. As a result, if Pedri and Lewandowski were not perfectly coordinated, it would open up potential room for a Real man to receive, and now they would have a 3 versus 2 in the midfield and could advance into dangerous positions on the pitch. This was especially the case down the right hand side, as with a man often looking to tie up Tchouaméni, they would switch to a double pivot, so Modric would be the highest man that could potentially receive. So here we can see Barcelona have switched to a rough 4-4-2 when looking to press, and Pedri is the man who has joined Lewandowski. But as you can see, the press is not well coordinated, with large gaps between De Jong and Busquets. So Real Madrid are able to easily find Modric in space, as Busquets was pressing Tchouaméni. So now Modric can look to turn. He can then drive up the pitch, and by the time De Jong looks to confront him, Benzema dropping deeper can now receive. So in general, the poor midfield shape from Barcelona was something that Real Madrid looked to exploit. And Tchouaméni was excellent throughout this match, and was often the base in order to begin their plays. He tended to drift out towards the right hand side, and this would then subsequently allow Carvajal to push high up and express his attacking instincts much more. So Tchouaméni's positioning was not just about being able to receive the ball more easily, but it was also providing cover for Carvajal's movement. At the same time, depending on how Dembele reacted, it meant either he would be drawn towards Tchouaméni, leaving a 2 versus 1 there, or a midfielder could be drawn further out. But the main goal of this positioning for Madrid was to get Carvajal higher up, and this would subsequently allow Valverde to drift infield. So now, Real Madrid effectively had a 4 versus 3 against Barcelona in central areas. And with this overload, they could look to slowly maneuver space to get men between the lines and into more dangerous positions. Alternatively, they could directly look for a penetrative pass to the man between the lines, often Valverde, who could then turn and face the goal. And again, whilst Busquets is still excellent on the ball, in bigger matches against better opposition, he really struggles physically. So this 4 versus 3 situation was not ideal to cover for his weaknesses. So here to begin the play, we can see that Tchouaméni has moved towards the right hand side, and initially both Valverde and Carvajal, who is beginning to move forward, are wide. So again, the Barcelona midfield is already being manipulated, and they've all been dragged over to the left hand side. So Kroos can then look to find Tchouaméni in that space. And now we can see that Carvajal is in the winger position, meaning that Valverde is free to move into the midfield alongside Modric. So one of these men can potentially receive a pass. And overloads were generally the name of the game for Real throughout the match. And another way they could look to do so, if they couldn't progress through the centre, was through Benzema moving deep and extremely wide to the left hand side. So when he received, he and Vinicius were often 2 versus 1 against Roberto. However, in this match they weren't able to make the most of that 2 versus 1 situation. So that's what Madrid did in possession, but some of their best play also came when Barcelona had the ball. So what happened in these situations? So Real were less likely to press and could hang back in their 4-3-3, although we did see that Valverde tended to operate deeper than Vinicius, who had a tendency to remain higher and come in more central with Benzema, so they could look like a front 2 at times. So here we see that in general, Vinicius was much more willing to join Benzema in the press. Whilst on the other hand, Valverde is looking to retreat as he operated deeper than Vinicius in general, for reasons that we'll speak about shortly. And when looking to stop Barcelona's progression through the midfield, Real's shape was variable. If Pedri and De Jong were pushing higher up and Busquets was the sole pivot, we saw them switch to a 2-1, with Modric advancing onto Busquets whilst Tchouaméni and Kroos remained deeper, so it would be man-to-man, making sure the pivot couldn't easily receive. So here we can see that Pedri and De Jong have pushed much higher up, and Busquets is the solo pivot. The Real Madrid have also responded to this shape by keeping Modric as the highest man, as he looks to cover Busquets. But, especially when the ball was higher up, Pedri was often tasked to drop in to be the second pivot alongside Busquets, seeing as Busquets was usually covered. And again, Madrid were looking to maintain a rough man-to-man structure in the midfield, so this could potentially drag a man higher up the pitch here. And in general, man-to-man situations can be dangerous for the defending team, because it just comes down to a matter of individual quality or a specific moment. So if a Barcelona midfielder was able to get past their man, now they would easily be running at the defense with the potential of playing a man through. And here we see a perfect example of this, as Tchouaméni is on Pedri, Modric on Busquets, and Kroos is looking to close down Frenkie de Jong. But here, de Jong is able to get away from the pressure of Kroos, who is now the wrong side. So now, he has acres of space in which to run, and potentially pick out a dangerous pass to a man higher up the field. But Pedri deep would also have some tactical advantages, as when he looked to receive in this position, it could drag Tchouaméni higher up the pitch. And in most phases, Dembele had moved into the half space because Balde was looking to overlap him. So when this space was created, he could look to drop deeper, to look to receive, and then turn to face the defense. So here we see a frequent pattern, with Dembele in the half space as Balde is on the outside, and Pedri will look to come deeper towards the ball. When Pedri moves here, Tchouaméni begins to be drawn out towards the ball, and Dembele is looking to move into the space vacated. But Ancelotti would have been well prepared for this, as he knows a major tenet for Xavi is to get situations like this where a front five can outnumber a back four. So the main reason that Valverde operated much deeper than Vinicius in general was that he is comfortable dropping into a right wing back position, so Carvajal could move in central, and as a result, the defense would be man-to-man rather than one man down. This would mean that when Dembele was in these positions, even if a midfielder was pressing Pedri, no matter how deep Dembele looked to go, the Real man could go in right alongside him, knowing that Valverde was covering outside. So here we see that Pedri is deeper once again, and Dembele has moved inside and is looking to drop deeper into the midfield as well. So now, when Pedri receives, Tchouaméni looks to press him, and Dembele is looking to drop into the vacated space. But knowing that Valverde has dropped in to cover Balde outside him, Carvajal is happy to vacate his space in the back line to prevent Dembele from turning. So one way Barcelona did look to counter this at times was by having Lewandowski drop deep into the midfield, and this could cause an overload in these zones. And Barcelona did see some success with this throughout the match, as they could then turn and look to find men running in behind. And in the second half, although Xavi stuck by his principles, he brought in Ferran Torres in this position initially, to be a second forward alongside Lewandowski, so that when he did drop he could run in behind, before later moving Ferran onto the right hand side, where he did get the goal from. Overall, this was a controlled performance from Real, keeping Barcelona where they wanted them for most of the match, and mainly limiting them to a high quantity of low quality shots. For this match, for the tactical score, Ancelotti earns a 9, having an answer for Xavi's every move, who, on the other hand, earns a 5, as he didn't necessarily do anything wrong, but was just outmaneuvered. But what did you make of this match? Drop it down below.